You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy Im, where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy Im.
Episode 20, Listen In with Allison Manswell. On today's episode of Brave Girls, we chat with Allison Manswell, a human resources professional and published author. I first met Allison when we worked in corporate. She was in corporate human resources, and she facilitated a team building and strategy session for the corporate communications team that I led. Originally from Montreal, Canada, and a member of the Royal Canadian Police, she tells of her journey from when I met her in corporate to today, where she owns her own firm where she consults with organizations on all things people. She recently celebrated her 1-year anniversary in business, which is a huge accomplishment. She's a published author and speaker, and her expertise in human behavior, including specific knowledge in leadership. She shares her views on leadership and why the platinum rule is more important than the golden rule. We talk about intention versus impact and what the difference is. We also talk about why an orientation towards speed may not be a good thing in an organizational culture. We also talk about all things business strategy, change management, collaboration, teamwork, accountability, and more on this episode. Allison shares some gems from her books and why she was compelled to write what she wrote. I'm so glad that Allison didn't ignore the call to write her books, despite her fear and resistance. She used her background as a behavioral scientist to start and lead the conversation around race relations, a very critical topic that we need to discuss in the world today. We also talk about what it means to be a working mom in the world and how Allison approached decision-making at both home and work. She shares what it means to get divorced and shift to a co-parenting relationship with her 3 sons. With that, I know that you'll want to follow Allison's work in the world, and I think you'll love our conversation on this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. I'd really appreciate it if you could tell a friend about the podcast so we can continue to spread good vibes around the globe. So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. I'm so excited today to have Allison Manswell with me. And Allison and I go pretty far back into our days in corporate. Allison, when I first met her, she was Director of Learning and Organizational Development at the company that I worked for. And I brought her in as a outside person basically to facilitate some group team building and a strategy session, and she was an incredible coach and an incredible facilitator for my team. And so when I decided to launch this podcast, I said, oh my goodness, I need to have Allison Manswell as a guest. So welcome to the show, Allison.
Hi, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. It was such a pleasure to do that particular event, and I have loved following what you've been doing since then.
Yeah, so Allison is also an author of a book called Listen In, Crucial Conversations on Race in the Workplace. She has her own firm now where she specializes in talent management, the whole life cycle, leadership development, diversity and inclusion, and managing different generations in the workforce. So the thing I think is most interesting about you, Allison, which I didn't even know until recently, is that you're Canadian and that you actually were in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So I will have to tell you, you're my very first guest who ever had that credential. So tell me about how you went from that to where you are today. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Oh, wow. So it is interesting. I was born and raised in Montreal. I actually did my bachelor's degree in justice and law enforcement. 3 weeks after graduation, I was sitting in my dream job and quite frankly had a wonderful career that was pretty well established and set out. And I woke up married in Maryland one day. And I realized that I had been issued a card that said I was a resident alien. And so as such, I wasn't eligible to go to work for the FBI or the CIA. And I thought I was being so clever. I was going to take this dumb job in HR. That's literally what I used to call it, because it was only intended until I got my real career back on track. And so here we are, like 24 years later, I don't call it my dumb job anymore. I actually love it. And it took me a long time to figure out what that transition was about. And what I think happened is that I was able to move from the dark side of behavior to the bright side. And so my interest in behavior has always been there, but to be able to be on the front end of shifting behavior as opposed to always dealing with the consequences on the back end, I think that's what drew me to stay in organizational development.
That makes sense. That really does. And then I know you have your master's degree with a concentration, you have an MBA with a concentration in leadership. And so that just continues your path of understanding human behavior and then specifically around leadership. And, so much of that has shifted, I think, even over the last 10 years in terms of what it takes to be a strong leader in the workforce today. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing.
Yeah, so it's interesting because when I did my MBA, it was specifically so that I could actually have a degree that was from the United States. It was a humbling experience to find out that people didn't respect my Canadian degree that much. And I really thought long and hard of what I wanted my MBA to be about. And even the principles that were originally in an executive MBA at that time have shifted so much. And there's a few nuggets about leadership that I realize are not in anybody's textbook. One of them has to do with the fact that we teach people that they ought to be leading others. And so much of leadership is about becoming a person that people naturally want to follow. And I think that message gets lost. The other message is that we have been taught to treat people the way we want to be treated. And because the golden rule is so much a part of our humanity, we never question that. However, if you really think about it, in today's workplace, if you as a leader run around treating everybody the way you want to be treated, you will actually come out looking like a terrible leader. And so the leadership need is really to shift from the golden rule to the platinum rule as the standard of how you operate in the workplace. And then I think the third nugget that is so important from a leadership perspective has to do with intent versus impact. When we're in kindergarten, we're held, responsible for our intention. So if I'm sitting in the circle and I hit my friend and the teacher says, Allison, say sorry to Tracy, I say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you. And so we're only responsible for what our intention was. But what we don't ever do is realize when you get into the workplace, you are also significantly on the hook for every behavior and its impact on other people. And I'm not sure that that particular message and then all three of them put together, I'm not sure that they are entrenched well enough into our leadership, this body of knowledge we call leadership.
Right. No, I think you're right. And some of it goes back to even the talent management. There might be a disconnect between, like, say, leadership competencies that an organization says they value, and then how they hire and recruit and how they reward. Like, there's disconnects all through the cycle. And that's probably where you come in a lot of times to help identify those gaps for organizations, and then develop training, basically, because that's what it really comes down to, is kind of retraining people and getting the systems all to align.
Absolutely. Actually, I was with a client last week, and in the middle of the training, a notion of speed came up. And I had been noticing this with this organization. They're very wired towards speed. They actually think that it's a great thing that they do everything so quickly, which is actually great. There are some places where their speed, it really does benefit them. But we began a conversation about how this orientation towards speed actually becomes a hindrance in two places. Number one, the hiring process specifically, and in number two, the notion of diversity, because what happens is it almost feels like there's a promotion of a lack of patience for anything that looks like what they already have. And so we were able to really have a big aha moment and say, okay, what will it take for us to preserve the elements of our culture that are really strong, very worthwhile, and yielding us tangible benefits, and also shift in ways that will get us to the results over here that we said we wanted.
Right, right. I think speed is always a tricky value to put up on a poster because it confuses people, right? Because there's unintended consequences. Just because you got something done quickly doesn't mean that there's not dead bodies after you executed against your process.
Absolutely right.
Right. So talk a little bit about your book, Listen In, Crucial Conversations on Race in the Workplace, and why, you felt called to write that publication.
Yeah, that actually, it's an interesting story. So initially, I'm sure you remember when the book Lean In came out,
Yes.
everybody was talking about Lean In. And of course, you couldn't be in a corporate conversation if you hadn't read the book. So I got into the book, I'm really going through it, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and I said to her, I'm sorry, I'm really trying. This book is just not resonating with me. I want to see, when is someone going to write a book about being Black in the workplace? She said to me, when you write it. I said, no, absolutely not. I will not be writing any book about race in the workplace. That would be career suicide. Why would I do that? And I will tell you, Tracy, this book simply didn't leave me alone. And especially the year 2015 was a very difficult year. Personally, it was hashtag overload. It was police brutality. Every other week there was another really impactful case. And quite frankly, I have 3 African-American sons, 2 of whom are drivers. And it just became very, very difficult to be expected to perform at a very high level, but to have this cloud of anxiety hanging over me. And to be honest, I believe that my personal anxiety as a mother collided with my professional expertise as a behavioral scientist. And I knew that locked up inside my head were ideas, strategies, and real life actions that could be done differently to move the needle on race as it's experienced in the workplace. And I know for sure that if we make a difference in terms of the only economy that most people care about, which is their paycheck every 2 weeks, if we can make a difference with regard to how people earn and what money they bring into their household, then by definition, we could make great strides in our community. And so after a while, it became a point that it's not that I can't write the book, I can't not write the book. And so there we have it. It actually was finished and actually hit newsstands in December 2015, and I have just been blown away by the response to it so far.
Yeah, because who are you not to write it, right? And like you said, you're this behavioral scientist, and you're having this dichotomy, and you've got the perfect background to start the conversation and to lead the conversation. And so that is just amazing. I think that you saw this opportunity and you just said, I have to write this, and I have to get these messages out, and I have to develop the training to make it comfortable for everyone to have these conversations, because they really are crucial. So that's fantastic. We'll put a link in the show notes so that people can link over to the book if they want to buy the book. I'm excited. I'm going to buy the book.
Sure. So I do need to say one thing, just as a disclaimer running across the screen right now. It's a real book, Tracy. It's I had people, once they found out that what I was doing, I had early readers who wrote the book, and something interesting happened. I realized that if I was going to write this book, I had a responsibility to write the real deal and to not sugarcoat, and to write a book that, it could make some people uncomfortable. However, what I promise is that the book is written as a fictional story, and it's deliberately written as a fictional story so that I could have creative license to be as real as possible. However, I was being real on both sides. So with the book follows 5 African-American friends who meet, get together after work and talk about their experiences in the workplace. And it also follows a white CEO named Jim who becomes passionate about the notion of race in the workplace after overhearing one of their conversations. And so what I'm hoping people experience in the book is, number one, a significant degree of realness, because you're being privy to conversations that you otherwise would not be privy to. And I just hang in all the way to the end, because the book really does come full circle. And so just felt I needed to put that disclaimer out there because I didn't want anybody to get put off by the first couple of pages.
Okay, that sounds great. That sounds great. So, what are some of the things that you see in your work with different corporations and organizations? What do you see as like maybe one of their number one struggles? Is it especially in the talent management arena?
Yeah, and it's funny you should ask me this because I've had an opportunity to be thinking about this. Here's where I've landed. I realize that companies themselves have a lot of internal people who know what they're doing. I remember being one of those internal people who was quite confident that I knew what I was doing. And I remember when, we would hire a consultant and I would be wondering, why are we hiring a consultant to say the same thing that I've been saying at every meeting for the last 6 months? And what I realize now is that what companies wrestle with is that they underestimate the difference between the strategy that they put down on paper and what they say they want to do, and the emotional delta that it will actually take for people to do what they want them to do. Mm-hmm. Never ever acknowledge the personal piece that keeps people from making behavior change. We don't acknowledge it. We don't act like we care about it. And then we just skip over and then say, and we want XYZ outcome. And so one of the things that I think is probably the most important challenge is making some sort of connection for companies to know this is the strategy that you have laid out. These are the behaviors. This is the action item. This is the project plan and timeline that we can establish to do this. Let's also just acknowledge and be real and be realistic about what it will take emotionally for people to change their behavior along the way. And I think that it's that. And maybe that's the part I've been most successful at is helping people to identify what are those things and how can we make those shifts comfortable. Well, actually, we're not always trying to make it comfortable. How can we make it tangible and hold people accountable for what we really have happen?
Right. And I've been in organizations where people don't hold their peers accountable. They don't hold the senior leadership accountable. And so accountability is such a good thing to focus on because sometimes we say we want something, like you said, that's in the strategy and it's at like what cost, right? And then if people aren't going to step up to the plate and do their behavior changes to change, kind of how they're going to get their piece of the puzzle done. Because it's all about collaboration and teamwork, right? As the organization's kind of coming together to do whatever it is, whether it's a merger and acquisition or it's a downsizing, whatever the big thing is that is the focus of the day. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, as a mother, how have you found that factoring into kind of how you manage your business, how you managed when you were in corporate? So talk a little bit about that, being a working mom.
Yeah, I have a way that I talk about being a mother that I inherited actually from my mother, who I thought was a great example. And I talk about the fact that I have been raising my career and raising my children at the same time. So I think I chose the model where I had my children, I had my life pretty much on track pretty early. I had my bachelor's degree at 21, I think, or just before my 21st birthday. I got married at 22, had my first child at 23. My children are 5 years apart. Nobody's supposed to be in college at the same time. It's all very prescribed, if you will. And inside of that, I've been really clear when I've had to make decisions that were in the best interest of my children and may or may not have been in the best interest of my career at that moment. But to be honest, I've never been worked up about it. So I'm really clear which role am I sitting in right now? What does my career require of me at home? What do my children require of me? And then I make it so that I figure out the home part first, and then I fit the career piece into that, and it all works fine. One of the things I didn't anticipate, probably, which was harder than being a working mom, was I underestimated the impact of getting divorced. And so, if anything, I think that making the shift from being two-parent household to being a single mom was probably required a little bit more brain cells than anything else along the way. And I have a wonderful family structure, and my ex-husband is a very large part of my children's lives. So I'm kind of careful about using the term single mom, because I want to reserve that term and everything about it for women who are really having a true single mom experience. And I think that there are some areas of privilege that I have that make me not really have that particular experience, but certainly being a divorced mother with 3 sons, and especially the ages that they are, it required a plan, and a couple places where we had to deviate off script, and just organize things to get back on track.
Good. I think that's all really good sage advice, and you are lucky that you can kind of co-parent in a way that's going to work for you guys. So let me ask you this: the other thing I noticed when I was kind of scanning your LinkedIn profile and your website is you do a lot of speaking, and you're part of the Les Brown kind of network. So how did you get involved with that, and how are you using speaking to kind of get your message out there?
Oh, yeah. So that is probably one of the most fulfilling parts of my career, and the fact that Les Brown was my very first career speaking mentor. And that's really a full circle moment, because my mother was very big into motivational speaking, Zig Ziglar. And I remember being a little girl on Saturday morning, everybody had their chores to do, and we're doing our chores and we're hearing Les Brown in the background, because instead of music, that's what she would play, right? And that in and of itself has had a profound effect on me, because I've been raised with motivational approaches in my head. And it was just an incredible experience. One Saturday, I'm standing around cleaning my house, and Les Brown calls me on my phone. It was the most incredible experience. So to have been invited to be part of his network, to do the training, to get some of the best professional speaking advice, coaching, training that's even available, and have him as a mentor to me, and really to have his validation, because I was very early in my speaking career, and to have him validate that, you are really good. You are going to do really well at this. I can't even express in words what that has meant to me. So I've met some incredible people as a result of that. Dr. Shirley Davis, has been just an incredible mentor to me as well. And so, yes, that I could go on and on about how much Les Brown has blessed my life.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think we all need mentors and coaches. Dr. Shirley's also one of my mentors. I think the word of her and what she's doing out in the world. So my finale question is always, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inspire you today?
Two things, I think. Well, I was going to say writing the book was probably the bravest, because I had to make a decision first. If I'm going to write a book, what kind of book am I going to write? Am I going to write the sanitized version of a book, or am I going to write a real book? So it's possible that writing a real book on race was the bravest thing. And then I think most recently, just making the decision to shift from the employee world to the entrepreneur world, that just has to be on the list of what that takes in terms of being out there and putting yourself at the mercy of the marketplace. And actually, yesterday was our 1-year anniversary, and it has been incredible. It has been incredible. So I think it's a tie between writing the book, real book, and being an entrepreneur.
Well, and congratulations on both. I believe that you are helping other people by allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to put yourself out there with the book. And I think that did take courage, but it's what needed to happen. And then congratulations, because I think leaving corporate and the every 2-week paycheck and having the faith and just leaping in the net is going to appear, and you're sharing all of this knowledge and all of these skills that you've developed over the years, all the way back to when you were in the mounted police to today, and that you're helping these other organizations to close the gaps that they have, which they all have, right? And so I just want to thank you for what you're doing out there, and for sharing your message, and for continuing to write and speak about topics that maybe some people don't feel comfortable going there, because somebody's got to do it. And you've got the background, you've got the training, you've got the behavioral scientist in you, you've got the street cred of all these organizations that you worked for. And like I said, when I met you, I thought you were phenomenal in allowing my team to kind of come together and get focused on our strategy and connect to the senior leaders. And you just had a gift for that. So thank you for everything that you're doing, Allison.
Thank you so much, Tracy, and thank you to you for creating this platform, specifically a platform that celebrates women and celebrates us in a way that could support and help someone else. Because what we both know is that there are women who are sitting in the same places we've sat. They're sitting in a job that, they want to do their very best. They don't understand why they're not getting where they want to go. And there's going to be something, whether it's in this podcast or in any of the others that you've done with other amazing women, that's going to be the thing that inspires and motivates them. So thank you from me to you for creating this platform.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.